Ladies and gentlemen, this is Leon Kraling of EBnet.Stream. Thank you for joining us today in this special edition of Power Plays and Paydays, where I have invited someone I do not know. It's someone who I noticed on LinkedIn, who wrote an article that got my attention. And I thought, you know what, let me get hold of him and ask if he would join us on our show today to explain to us the article that he wrote and the opinion that he put out there, much to his own vulnerability. So I'd like to welcome today Sethu Ndlovu. Sethu, as you can see, is a young man, a lot younger than what I am. And Sethu recently wrote an article, as I said, on LinkedIn, which basically said that the culture of tentrepreneurs is killing the culture of entrepreneurs in South Africa, or something to that effect. But rather than me explain the article, I'd like to ask Sethu to give us an overview of that article that he wrote and why, what inspired that article. So first of all, Sethu, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on with us today. And would you mind giving the background to the article and what you expressed?
Right, so instantly, firstly, greetings, Leon, and greetings to all of your viewers. I am Sethu Ndlovu, and I decided to create, to put it into simple terms, I'm a thinker. As many entrepreneurs are, we tend to overthink because of the amount of systems that we create and all of the problems that we discover. So there was this one problem that I kept asking myself is, why is the youth entrepreneurial community flourishing so well? Well, not all of them per se, but there's a high percentage of entrepreneurs who are trying and actually getting things done compared to entrepreneurs here at home. So I started thinking to myself, what is going on? Well, we see all these wonderful government organizations like SEDA, NIDA, etc. But what is really the cause? Because, well, at the end of the day, you can't really go to school or learn how to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of something that happens. And we do have a pretty big, dare I say, demographic or niche of people that do feel that burning desire or that feeling or that drive to become an entrepreneur. And the problem then, from my analysis, was the vehicle which they choose to get themselves from the current thesis that they're experiencing in life to the synthesis that they want to be in, which is obviously, it's different for everyone. It could be whether you want to make an extra 100,000 Rand a month, or, you want to buy a house for your parents, or whatever the cause may be. So what I've noticed is that in the West, we find role models like the Iman Gajis, the Alex Hermosis, Steve Jobs, all of these guys who's in the main light, mainstreamed, everything that they've created is out there for everyone to know. Jeff Bezos, everyone sees the picture of Jeff Bezos in his garage, selling his books on, like, just before Amazon was a big hit. And my question was, why is the same thing happening in South Africa? So when you look at those guys, you follow their stories. Like, okay, cool, Jeff went from this, he was studying in his garage, he scaled using this, he went from that to that to that to that to that. Same thing with Iman, cold calling, cold emailing, all of the sales structures, the client acquisition systems, all of that. But then in South Africa, I've realized that we don't really have as many role models. And those that we do have, I'm not saying that we don't have any of them. We do have them, but they aren't given the platform or they aren't reaching as many of the youth as, your tenderpreneurs do. Take, for example, I'm just gonna take examples from my own life or like childhood, for example. So I grew up in a town called Newlands West. It's in Durban. So I was fortunate enough to go to George Campbell School of Technology, which is one of the best technical high schools in the country. So this was the school where everyone would send, like the tenderpreneurs would send their kids. People would like good working parents would send their kids. So I'd see where the money was flowing. I'd obviously see the kids getting dropped off in the Mustangs and the G-Wagons at school and be like, oh, cool, what does your mom do? What does your dad do? And so you see these role models. It's like, oh, okay, cool. His dad has a tender with Prasa or Transnet or, et cetera, et cetera. And you look again on this side, all of these guys, their parents are, they're always up there and, living that life. And you're like, okay, cool. I want to be like that. Now, take myself out of the situation and just take someone right now today on social media. Before the whole Morgan raid or the Kat Matlala situation, I hope I'm not wrong for saying their names. But, when you see them on the Instagram and the social medias, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Lamborghinis, Rolexes, the mansions, it's all things that you want to achieve. And what business model do they do? Tendering. And it has been so commercialized and so glamorized to a point where the actual entrepreneurial side of, okay, cool, I need to create a sales system, or let me find a niche to service, or let me figure out a way to service this problem, package that into an offer and take it to the market. None of that exists. All that you're taught is get your CIP certificate, get your tax clearance, bid for that tender, and if you don't get it, bid for the next one. If you don't get it, bid for the next one. Where the people saying, take that same company and try to pitch to the privates, pitch to consultants. If you're a construction company, go and ask, I don't know, pitch to Stefanuti and say you want to be like a sub provider to whatever they're doing. Where are the people teaching that? So in my view, until we are able to say, hey, yes, tendering is good. It's there. It's a nice way to go from zero to, I don't know, it's a nice way to break into the market. But there is also another side of creating a system, creating the client acquisition structure, how to service those people, product fulfillment, how to manage staff, all of those core functions of entrepreneurship and being a business owner as a whole. Until those metrics or those parts are really delved into and more mainstreamed, I don't think there will be much of a change in the youth at all.
So it's an interesting debate, and I've thought a lot about this, and I want to quote some numbers that are pulled out just with regards to procurement from a government perspective in South Africa. But I want to start off at a more grassroots sort of level, talking about sport. And I've always found the assessment of the Proteas on the cricket side versus the Springboks on the rugby side to be quite interesting. And when you look at it, there's never really been quotas on the rugby side. It was a case of there were structures that were put in place so that guys could learn, develop, put the hard yards in, and then be given opportunities fairly in that regard, where the team as a cohesive unit would have confidence, one man relative to the next, because your brother's going into war and you must win. That's the point of the sport. And look what's happened. We've won multiple World Cups. We boxed above our weight continuously on the rugby side. Where within cricket, there was always the talk about quotas, minimum 5 or 6 players of color within the team. And again, while I can sit and say I understand why that was necessary, if you don't build the structures, if you don't put the guys through the hard yards, when they end up in that cauldron of pressure, they look at each other and they're wondering, are we as strong as what we could be? Or even the person himself is wondering, am I actually deserve it to be here? And if that's what's going on in your mind, you're more likely to fail than succeed because you're doubting yourself within it. So I think it's a classic case study of where free markets ultimately drive us to learn, compete, get stronger, pivot when we need to, where Tenderpreneurship, you don't always need to do that. Because often what you can do as a tenderpreneur is you simply take someone else's mug and go sell it at a premium, right? Without having to create anything. It's easy from that perspective. I've seen many entrepreneurs. I've tried to be an entrepreneur myself, where you sit and you worry about cash flow for the next month. Where's that going to come from? There's something very humbling about that kind of experience as an entrepreneur, where you are having to solve for how you're going to pay your people. And because of that, you are always sharpening. You're always trying to get better at every single thing that you do. You wake up and you think and you go. Where if it's too easy, then what happens is the money just comes in. I don't have to be the best I can be. I just simply need to be there. I can rather spend my time going out and spending the money and having the lavish lifestyle and so on. So let me maybe pause at that and get your view on whether you agree with that or not. But then I would like to quote a few numbers as to why it's so easy in the world of tenderpreneurship, and where perhaps we've gone wrong as a country in that respect.
Yeah, 100%. I do fully agree with that point, mainly because, well, as you've said, let me just take myself as an example with how I started my entrepreneurial journey. I started when I believe I was 16. Yeah, I believe I was 16. I used to do a little thing called drop shipping. So drop shipping, for viewers that aren't aware, it's when you essentially create an online store, let's say based on headphones, for example. Create an online store based on headphones. You don't own the headphones. They just literally just all sourced in China. Whenever someone pays you, you take that money. You've marked up the price from your supplier in China, buy the headphones in China, and the supplier ships them directly to wherever your customer is. So that's how I really got started. So with that experience of now learning that, okay, cool, I'm 16 years old, I know I don't know anything. So it forced me to now learn, okay, cool, this is how you make a website to Shopify. Okay, cool, this is how I get traffic into my website. Now I've got the traffic. How am I getting this traffic to convert? Okay, cool. Now I know how to get them to convert. They are converting, but now I'm losing more people in the abandoned carts, how to retain those customers, etc., etc., etc. So, it's quite interesting when you put it in that way, because when people are just it's given to them based off, I'm a young black male or a young black woman, which is now preferred nowadays, if I'm not mistaken. I just have to be there and I'll get it. I don't need to improve. Service delivery doesn't really, I'm not too sure what it's like, if like the government has a way to check how service fulfillment goes with these guys. Some cases they don't really check it that well. So I don't need to improve anything. I don't need to make sure that I've done this the best way that I could have, So yeah, I do 100% agree with that point.
EBnet is proud to bring you top quality content from experts across the financial services industry in South Africa and internationally for free. Your support helps us in doing this. All we ask is that you subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below. Share this video with others you think will benefit from it, and give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying the content. That way you help us help you. Thank you from the team at EBnet. For more great content, please visit www.ebnet.co.za.
If you part of free markets and you doing what you were doing, you would have had to say, right, what is my price point? How much will it cost me? How much can I sell it at? In terms of determining what you can sell it at, you've got to be competitive. So you got to look out there and say, right, well, it's going to cost the buyer, and they're free to go buy wherever they like. They're going to get it at that price. So I need to come in at that. Do I have enough margin? If I don't, I've got to, become more efficient, or I've got to have better distribution, or whatever it might be, or my marketing needs to be better. So those are all of the skills you're now problem solving for. And as you're doing that, you're getting better, you're failing, you're succeeding, and you're learning. That's just the reality of it. If you come to the tenderpreneurial world, I pulled these stats this morning. So let me just get to it so I don't quote it incorrectly. So National Treasury has guidelines, or we'll call it rules, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework of 2000. And the specific rules were outlined in 2022, where in essence, I'm not going to go through all of the details, but when government agencies or state-owned enterprises procure, if you're a contract that they're giving out of less than 50 million, in essence, as long as the scoring of the capability is the same, right? You must give it to the black-owned enterprise, and you can do so at a premium of 25%, essentially. I think it's 25. Either 20 or 25% is the premium that you can pay. So there can be Leon or there can be Setu. As long as we score equally in terms of whatever the delivery is, it's okay to pay you the extra amount, which is okay. But now in that situation, that gives you the ability to come to me and say, give me your products, right, at the price you would have sold it at, and I'll just simply add 20%. So what have you had to do? What have you had to learn? Where's the value add? What have you created? And what do you need to help deliver that? Do you need to employ people? Do you need to build a factory? You don't, because I'm just doing it all behind you. And there's been cases like that and a lot of exploitation, but that's how simple it ultimately becomes. For companies or for contracts of greater than 50 million, let me just find it again. The premium on those is 11% or 11.1%. Now, if you take the total spends that the government or state-owned enterprises do and you work out how much that premium will be based on all the BEE spend that they do, it works out to around about 40 to 50 billion rand per annum. Right? The reason they were putting through the VAT increase this year when it was budget time was to make up about 40 million. So ultimately what was happening off the back of this policy that was supporting Tenderpreneurship is the average man in the street was going to pay that money to those Tenderpreneurship. Now, what were they doing with it? Okay, well, we can see now when we talk about Cat Matlala and all the rest, it was Lamborghinis, it was Louis Vuitton, it was overseas brands where that money was flowing through for those luxury brands and going offshore, not back into South Africa in any way. Whereas an entrepreneur, when you get that next buck, okay, you're looking at that money and you're saying to yourself, what do I invest it in to make it $2 or $3? And in doing that, you're saying, what do I need to build? Who do I need to hire? How can I supplement myself? How can I get bigger and better at the end of the day? And that's why I think the article that you wrote was spot on. Absolutely spot on, because it's showing guys that, you know what, I don't actually need to put the hard yards in. Why do I need to put the hard yards in if I can make the money easier by, just simply taking others' products and then, applying for tenders or that. So on that note, I want to know from you, why the hell didn't you just do that? Why did you choose to go the hard route of saying, let me be an entrepreneur, worry about cash flow, okay, worry about succeeding or failing? You could have just put your face onto someone else's product and gone out and made a fortune and bought the Lamborghinis and Ferraris, which is nice. Why didn't you do that?
Well, I wish I could say I have some ultra superior motive in life, but it's not entirely that way. It's kind of sort of, I'd like to call it Charlie, I heard this quote from Charlie Morgan. I believe it's called Elucidatory Axioms, where he's talking about the laws of cause. Essentially, he's talking about causal law. You can't really get something without really having a plan or a goal or a system to get to it. Yes, sure, I could get the tender now for that 10 million or 20 million, but after costs and whatever, that'd be, I'll be left with what, 3 million rand? And then that's not going to sustain me wholeheartedly for the next 40, 50, 60 years of my life. So I had to come up with a plan to say, okay, cool, what do I want in the future? Okay, cool, I want to make this amount of money. What is the best step to get there? Okay, cool, I have a background in drop shipping. I've got these certificates from Google and LinkedIn. How about I just use this to create my B2C business into a B2B business? Because I was already getting an influx of inbound leads. So why not just do that? And from there, it started growing and growing and growing. I saw the potential it had for, to actually make a living from it, and I just went all in. So it wouldn't have fulfilled me to know that, all I do in life is just bid for tenders. And unfortunately, currently the tender lifestyle is being followed by these guys with these massive automatic rifles behind me because my neighbor wanted the tender and he didn't get the tender, and he believes by eliminating me that he'll get the tender. So, it wasn't a life really worth living. So I just found more passion and actually enjoyed, the problem solving of the ups and downs of, getting clients, figuring out how to like manage teams, because managing people is one of the hardest things ever. But after a while, you tend to look back and you smile at everything that you've built, and you're like, okay, cool, I've built this, and now there's that goal to reach forward to.
And I think so. Congrats to you for seeing things that way, but also it has greater longevity. That and greater fulfillment ultimately for yourself, and you can see it right now. The easy buck it doesn't last. I mean, that's the reality, and it also tends to very easily turn into corruption, because when we get things too easily, we can become entitled, and therefore we protect it in strange ways. And we're seeing that happen right now on this entrepreneurial side. Not everyone, but it does tend to be permeated a little bit greater in that regard, where when you have built something yourself and you've built the skill in order to be successful, you back yourself to continue to be successful. You don't need to turn to ulterior motives and means to protect yourself, because you already have the skill set to do so. That's the reality. So I mean, like, there was just this latest case of the springs that were sold to Transnet that cost something like R3 a spring, and they were always paying that. And one of the entrepreneurs took it over and sold it at R150 per spring, which is well in excess of any of these other procurement laws or whatever. So it shows you where the corruption comes into it. But again, that 47 rand wasted is taxpayer money. It's taking money away from guys that are struggling to find a job, earning 350 rand social grant every single month and so on. That's who it's ultimately impacting through all of this. So well done to you for saying, hang on a second, I can do this. I can create something.
To just add on to that point, apologies for cutting you off. I found that a lot of my, say, friends that have been a part of this, let me just call it the consultancy road, the entrepreneurial road. Majority of them see that reality of, okay, cool, I make 100 grand a month. Now I'm going to pay tax for 45,000 rand a month, which is cool. It goes to whatever it is, patching the roads and whatever. But now you see things like these on the news and you're like, oh, well, let me just leave the country and jump ship. So I've seen a lot of my peers who have essentially have the same mindset move to countries like Dubai, I believe you came and went to Mauritius, all of these tax haven countries, because they've essentially just given up. So I feel like that's another way we're also losing, those pure entrepreneurs, because they're like, oh, well, if I'm getting taxed so much and I'm just paying a Morgan Momella to have a mansion in Pretoria, let me just leave and take my money elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think the point that you raised in your article around mentors, or what's the right word, role models, is also being distorted, not just by entrepreneurs, but the whole BE attempts, if I could put it that way. And I mean, our president is a case in point. I mean, he benefited from that massively without really creating anything, and that's the role model that is ultimately there for people to look at. But the problem with that is it can't last forever. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to create a functioning society that is for all people to be able to to not so much thrive, but to be able to survive in, kind of thing. And we're not doing that now. This is where, again, efforts by people like yourself are the people that are going to solve that picture, not the politicians. They've got too many vested interests ultimately within it, not the tenderpreneurs. They're in it for themselves. That's the reality. It's people like yourself who's willing to put those hard yards in, and is also willing to create conversation and be vulnerable in those conversations. So you got a bit of flack from a couple of people on that article that you wrote, was basically accusing you of seeing tenderpreneurship as just corrupt. And I felt that they missed the point. They absolutely missed the point. And I could also see an element of you. You're an amiable character, so you were almost trying to protect yourself a little bit, to say, oh, okay, sorry, maybe I didn't. And I thought that you had said nothing wrong. But more as a case of those people were saying, ooh, you're threatening my turf here, kind of thing. So how did that make you feel?
It was kind of, I didn't feel a particular way about it, mainly because I understand something of there's two types of people in this world. There's people who are always willing to learn more, and there's people who always defend what they know already and aren't willing to accept any new information. So it was a thing of one. Saw a lot of comments saying that, Tinders, what are the youth? And I was like, first of all, you did not read the article in its entirety. All you saw was the headline, because I had to make it I had to capture attention. So I couldn't just write, oh, how bad role models have affected the youth. So it was simply just tenderpreneurs versus entrepreneurs. And whenever, as South Africans as a whole, white, black, old, young, whenever we see the word tenderpreneur, there's that little thing that, you think about that pothole that, curbed your rim a few days ago, or someone else thinks about how I bought my Rolex using this Eskom tender, for example. And, it's just something that kind of sort of jugs that thing within people. So how I tried to answer those people was, okay, cool, I'm sorry, just to, get their guard down, but also try to show them or come at them at a different angle and say, but wait a minute, this is actually what I was trying to say instead of what you're accusing me of. So it was kind of an interesting debate to have with a lot of these people. But yeah, that was just how I maintained or attacked that commentary battle.
But it's interesting. Everyone talks about the woke mind virus, so you can't express a contrary opinion without being cancelled, essentially, within that thinking. And I think we've been suffering from that in South Africa quietly back since 1994, where the average white person became so afraid to say something against any of the policies in South Africa because you'll just be deemed a racist. Because by default, a lot of the policies were in favor of black people, and rightly so, but it doesn't mean that they were the correct policies, right? And we ourselves were so afraid to, it was like, excuse me, I think that's going to be problematic, okay, and just put it out there. We didn't do that, and now we're living with the consequences of perhaps policies that haven't played out as intended, or perhaps it was well understood how they would play out, but then it was clear who would benefit. So perhaps
exactly. And if I can just add something to that point, I'm not too sure if it's reached the I hate to call it white TikTok or white Instagram, but let me just call it white Instagram for the fact or for the purpose of this conversation. But on the black side, it's always a thing of, oh no, white people don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to be successful. Look at him complaining about BEE. He doesn't want you to be successful, or you'll never get a white client. And when I got into the world and actually started doing this consultancy business that I have, I realized that firstly, I don't like to categorize my clients in terms of race, but I have to for the purpose of the point I'm about to make. The black clients that I've had, they're the ones that, didn't really respect the work that you did, that I've done, or, they're always the ones paying late, or, saying, I'm going to pay this day, I'm going to pay this day, I'm going to pay this day. Some won't even open the door for you or actually respond to your message to hear you out. But on the contrary side, the white clients, actually as old as they are, Because there's this old belief that old white people are racist, whatever. As old as they are, they've given me more opportunities. They've heard me out. They've referred me to their communities, and it's just there's this more of a, let me just call it, a bit of a warmth that you get from the white side of the business world. And it's a thing of why are we now blocking black kids or the black entrepreneurs or black business owners from trying to acquire these white entrepreneurs by telling them that, oh no, they'll never work with you because you're black and you're young. And it's quite it's a limiting belief that I also think is something that's actually blocking certain black entrepreneurs from growing.
Yeah, but so I think that, look, I mean, we need to be realistic at the end of the day. The apartheid was wrong. It created terrible bias within our communities and so on, and for all the wrong reasons. And yes, there has to be redress in that regard, but redress can come about in many different ways. And as soon as you artificially adjust free market forces, there's unintended consequences. That's just the reality. Either people aren't going to learn as much as they need to, or they're not going to be experienced as much as they need to. That's the unintended consequences. So you have to mitigate. Just like any risk, you've got to mitigate in that regard. And if you don't, well, then you're on a highway to who knows where. That's the reality. Now, let's also not forget that BEE as a mitigation tactic was not something just dreamt up by the ANC. It was the ANC and Business South Africa, which was white owned at the time. And part of it was also to help protect that ownership, so that people could remain in power, so to speak, within the business community. So it wasn't, to me, criticizing BE is not a black versus white thing. It's just a poor policy thing. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that opinion. I have a similar opinion around affirmative action, not because I think black people are less competent, but because if you accelerate people too quickly, you miss out on a whole lot of lessons that you need to learn so that you can have the confidence when you are at the top to make decisions, because without decisions you can't move forward. And that's just life. That doesn't mean that you can't get to that level quickly, but then you've got to have the natural talent to get there. That's the reality. But if you accelerate someone too quickly and they can't handle the pressure, well, then they're stuck, and that's going to actually hurt their career rather than benefit them at the end of the day. So that's just my opinion. And the fact that I'm now willing to express that opinion is very, very different compared to a couple of years ago. And it's because of people like yourself coming out and also challenging the norm of thinking that it allows me that freedom. So thank you. That's what the consequence is of this. And that's why I'm seeing this rise in podcasts in South Africa. There's a willingness now to have a conversation. Having a conversation and learning from each other and understanding each other is more power than what we could ever hope for. Because that to me, I call it the Springbok way. That's where the Springboks have ultimately gotten things right. And I do think South Africa is starting to get on that path. And we've got a lot of hurdles still, but we are starting to get on that path. And at the end of the day, it's important. And for our community, when it comes down to retirement funding and people that are employed saving for retirement and getting more people employed so that there's investment opportunities for growth, it's critically important, because otherwise those opportunities will run out. And we will end up retiring into a non-functional environment where the cost of retirement is too high, and so on. And it's people like yourself that, if you pursue this entrepreneurial route and you create employment and you build things and you act as role models for others, that will save that environment. And that's, at the end of the day, how important it is. So don't lose sight of that role. As much as you're doing it because you want to succeed, that is the unintended consequence of your success at the end of the day. So,
thank you very much for that. Yeah.
On that note, Setu, thank you so much. I'd like to just give you 2 minutes to tell me what your business does and what it's called.
All right, cool, 100%. So I own Yanda Acquisition, and what we do is we help consultants and B2B service providers scale and grow their client acquisition systems using our proven client acquisition systems, which we've used for over 70 clients right now across the UK, the US, and the UAE region. So that is what we do. And yeah, we are currently on the roadmap to reach 200 B2B consultants by the year end of 2027. So it's a big goal, and yeah, we are hoping to reach there because we had an amazing team on our side helping us build all these systems. And yeah, that is what we do in a nutshell.
Okay, well, congratulations to you. Well done on your success today. I will put contact details in the description of this video if anybody wants to contact you. Do you have a website?
Oh, yes, we do. It's yanderacquisition.com.
Okay, cool. So we'll put that in there as well. And if you do have any friends who are on the same path as you, entrepreneurs who are wanting to get their voices out there, please get them to contact me. I'd love to have them on the show as well.
100%. We'll most definitely do so.
Sethu, again, well done. Thank you for writing that article and giving me the confidence to express my views. It's liberating, and we wish you all the very best for your future.
100%. Thank you so much, Leon, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in.
Yeah, that is Sethu Ndlovu, and this is Leon Kraling of EBnet.Stream.